It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. 4 Israeli hostages are rescued alive in Gaza, but Hamas claims more have been killed as Benjamin Netanyahu vows everyone will return dead or alive.
We're committed to getting the release of all the hostages, and we expect Hamas to release them all. But if they don't, we'll do whatever it takes to get them all back home.
The operation took place in Nuseirat in central Gaza, where Hamas have said 210 people were killed, with hundreds more injured. Also tonight, we won't give up. The Greek islanders vowing to keep searching for missing TV doctor Michael Mosley. Putting his early D-Day departure behind him, Rishi Sunak pledges a cut to stamp duty and a U-turn on ULEZ. Plus, standing ovations for Rob Burrow as rugby unites to pay tribute to a legend. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Tears of joy and sorrow for the families of 4 hostages rescued alive from Gaza in the biggest operation of its kind since the war began 8 months ago. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his forces had acted with creativity and boldness, but Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has accused Israel of a bloody massacre, with hundreds left dead and injured in the aftermath. And tonight, Hamas has claimed more hostages were killed during the rescue operation. Israeli forces rescued the hostages from 2 houses in Al-Nuseirat, an area in central Gaza, in an operation which had been planned for months but delayed several times. According to health officials at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, at least 2 were killed, with a further 400 injured, making it one of the bloodiest attacks since the beginning of the war. The hostages were taken to a medical facility in Tel Aviv, where they were reunited with their families. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi reports from Israel.
It is a moment the families feared they'd never see. After 8 months in captivity, Noa Argamani is reunited with her father. The emotion is overwhelming. It contrasts sharply with the last time he saw her alive. These distressing images show how she was abducted, taken hostage on October the 7th. The 25-year-old was kidnapped along with Almog Maya, Andrei Kozlov and Shlomi Ziv from the Nova Music Festival, which was taking place next to the border with Gaza. All of them have now been taken to this medical center in Tel Aviv. Here they were reunited and connected with loved ones for the first time. For the families, their sudden and dramatic release after 246 days is miraculous.
I am in euphoria, in such a euphoria.
You can't believe that this has happened.
I can't believe this has happened. Yes, yes. Thank God. Thank to our soldiers.
At the medical center, the hostages met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who welcomed them home. For him, this is rare good news.
We're committed to getting the release of all the hostages, and we expect Hamas to release them all. But if they don't, we'll do whatever it takes to get them all back home.
Across Israel, there has been national celebration when lifeguards announced over tannoy to beachgoers that the 4 hostages had been rescued. There were cheers and applause. The released hostages will remain here at the hospital under observation for the time being. But despite the celebration across the country, the focus now in Israel is on the 120 hostages that still remain inside Gaza. The chances of carrying out another daring mission are slim. This IDF footage shows the hostages being guided by troops to a waiting helicopter before it takes off. Hamas's military wing claims hostages were killed in the rescue. Israel's military hasn't commented on that. They described it as a highly complex operation.
Based on precise intelligence conducted in daylight in two separate buildings deep inside Gaza. While under fire inside the buildings, under fire on the way out from Gaza, our forces rescued our hostages.
And in Gaza, it is clear civilians have paid a heavy price for the release of the hostages. Hundreds killed and injured during the operation. At the hospitals that are still functioning, there's chaos and fear. The stream of wounded just keeps on coming. The pain and suffering relentless. The international outrage over the war in Gaza will continue to grow as the bloodshed shows no sign of stopping. But Israel's government will see the release of the hostages as vindication that the strategy in Gaza is working. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
Pressure had been growing on Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at home and abroad, not only to find a way to get hostages home, but also to outline how the conflict might come to an end. The operation to rescue the hostages may have been deemed a success by Israel, but it came at a huge cost to Palestinian lives, with President Joe Biden once again amongst those calling for a ceasefire. Sky's US correspondent Mark Stone has more, and a warning: his report contains distressing images from the start.
Beyond the jubilation of a rare Israeli hostage extraction is the cost on the ground in Gaza. The images that our team has filmed are among the worst from the last 8 months of war. The injured are everywhere, and they are of every age. Survivors, some barely alive. Look here on the right, still breathing, just. This is the now dysfunctional Al-Aqsa hospital, the closest to the location of the hostage raid. And it is a scene of utterly helpless chaos. The area where the hostages were held, where the daytime raid took place, is just over 2 miles away. We cannot be sure how many Palestinians died, but the pictures tell the most horrific story. Dozens dead, all around. Children in pieces. The Israeli military is not denying that there were Palestinian casualties. They were caught in the crossfire, we're told, as the special forces moved in and moved out again with the hostages. Their deaths, say Israel, are on Hamas for hiding their captives among civilians. By late afternoon, the Palestinian hospital spokesman said the number dead was over 200.
The Israeli army committed an ugly massacre in central Gaza, particularly in the Nuseirat camp. More than 210 people were killed and at least 400 injured, including children, women and the elderly.
So what now for President Biden's peace plan? Unveiled just a week ago, he is in France this weekend with nothing on the civilian cost of the rescue.
I want to echo President Macron's comments welcoming the safe rescue of 4 hostages that were returned to their families in Israel. We won't stop working until all the hostages come home and a ceasefire is reached. That is essential to happen.
At the White House, a huge weekend pro-Palestinian protest. Biden's doorstep reminder that he faces huge pressure from every side. President Biden has always said that getting hostages back was one of his top priorities, but then so too was protecting civilians. That so many have died undermines his strategy. It damages him, and goodness knows where it leaves prospects for peace. And despite protests in Israel too, Netanyahu may see his success, hostages home, as proof that force is a means to an end. One consequence of the rescue was that his rival Benny Gantz, who had threatened to collapse the government this weekend over disagreements on Gaza, well, he did not resign. Prospects for a ceasefire soon in pieces. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
My correspondents are live in the United States and Israel tonight. In a moment, we'll speak to Mark Stone in Washington, D.C. But first, let's cross to our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, who's in Tel Aviv for us. And Alex, joy for some families tonight, but more anguish for those with loved ones still left in Gaza and for the Palestinians caught up in the rescue operation.
Yeah, this is rare good news in Israel. This war, of course, has been grinding on grimly for 8 months. It looks as though the Israeli military are getting bogged down. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has not outlined any plan for what happens when the fighting ends. But here we have the news that 4 hostages have been released. Hamas, incidentally, are saying that hostages were killed in the rescue. We've not heard from the Israeli government or the military on that. But where, of course, does it go from here? It is all extremely unclear. Benny Gantz, of course, is not going to resign immediately from the interim government, from the government of Israel, the war cabinet, but he may do in the future. And pressure is mounting on Benjamin Netanyahu to come up with some kind of way forward for all of this. But certainly he will be looking at this tonight as vindication politically that his strategy is working. He has always said to his critics that the only language that Hamas understands is the language of force. The priority is still for Israel to get hostages out. And as far as the Israeli government is being concerned, any collateral damage, as we were hearing in Mark's report, well, then that is on Hamas as far as they are concerned. But the prospects that there will be any end to the fighting, that looks pretty far away tonight.
OK, let's cross to Mark in Washington now. And Mark, President Biden may be in France, but there were protests where you are earlier on. What's been the president's response?
Yes, actually bigger protests than I have seen here in Washington. You'll remember over the course of the past few months there have been large protests across college campuses here in the United States. President Biden politically has taken a massive dent, not all that far away from a presidential election in November. But to see them here surrounding the White House as they were earlier on today with a little bit of trouble, but not a great deal, it was certainly striking. In terms of where all this goes, look, President Biden's not here now. He's not here for a couple of days. He's in Europe for the weekend, but he is having important diplomatic meetings. There is, of course, the G7 later on this coming week. Antony Blinken, his Secretary of State, is touring the Middle East yet again over the course of the coming days. So at least they will be talking. At least there will be some dialogue. At least the United States government will have eyeball time with their Israeli counterparts, with others in the region as well, key Gulf Arab countries. Where there is so little hope, you have to look for some. And I hope that perhaps, maybe, there is hope at these diplomatic moments. But the other thing, looking, Gillian, at those images filmed by our team in Gaza, you wonder where common ground can ever be found between these two sides when there is such bloodshed, when there is such hatred growing between the two sides. You wonder how common ground can ever be found.
Mark, thank you, and Alex as also. Authorities on the Greek island of Symi have vowed not to give up their search for British TV doctor Michael Mosley, now missing for 4 days. His wife today thanked all those still looking for her husband, describing the wait for news as long and unbearable. Dr. Mosley was on holiday on the mountainous island of Symi, about 20 miles north of Rhodes. The 67-year-old is understood to have left his wife on St. Nicholas Beach at 1:30 p.m. on Wednesday to walk back to their accommodation, a private house owned by friends. It should have taken less than an hour, but he never arrived. The route he took was reportedly along the coastal path, past the Peddy area. He was seen on CCTV at around 2 p.m. walking with an umbrella. He didn't have his phone with him. Dr. Mosley was also captured on CCTV walking along the marina in the opposite direction to the house. At 7:30 p.m, his wife raised the alarm after he failed to return. Sky's Sadia Chowdhury reports from Symi.
Even the experts find this too hot. At nearly 40 degrees, staying out longer isn't an option.
How long were you up there for? How many hours or how many minutes?
Me, 2 hours.
2 hours.
3.
The morning search has yielded nothing, and this is the only ground team we encountered all day. Is it dangerous to walk on?
Yes, man, very dangerous.
Okay. So you wouldn't recommend someone to go there?
No, absolutely not. Without equipment and specific shoes, no.
The local mayor insists it is a large-scale operation.
We're doing all humanly possible to find him.
But he admits he's still waiting for a thermal imaging helicopter and says the sniffer dogs can't work in this heat.
It isn't easy with these temperatures, and it isn't easy with that type of terrain for him to be found.
Michael Mosley has now been missing for more than 3 days. These last sightings of him caught on video now integral to the efforts to find him. After he was seen on CCTV footage, Dr. Mosley is believed to have walked north, so this has now become the site of the search. We can't see any ground teams here, just a helicopter whirring above. On land, it's business as usual. Holidaygoers know the search is underway, but everyone says the same thing. This island is so small, how can someone simply vanish? Dr. Mosley's family remain desperately hopeful. In a statement, his wife thanks the search efforts. She called these the longest and most unbearable days of her life. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News, on Simi in Greece.
The Conservatives have pledged to get rid of stamp duty tax for first-time buyers if they stay in power. The move, which would affect properties up to £425,000, has the makings of a popular policy. But it remains to be seen if it's enough to distract the national conversation away from the Prime Minister's D-Day faux pas. Here's Rob Burrow.
Grab some cans.
A Prime Minister lying low and trying to dampen down anger over his departure from D-Day events. Rishi Sunak came to County Durham after one of his ministers said his decision to leave France early had been completely wrong. With planned questions from journalists cancelled, it was left to an ally to say whether Penny Mordaunt was right.
He apologised both to the country and also to those veterans, and I completely agree with what he said.
Do you agree with what Penny Mordaunt said, that he was completely wrong?
I agree with what the Prime Minister said. He said it was a mistake.
Once dominated by mining families, Labour politics should hang in the air in Bishop Auckland. It went Tory for the first time in 2019, but after scandal and instability, this latest mishap may leave its mark.
I'm an ex-serviceman myself, so it's a no-no, really. You know, you should have known better.
It just didn't seem fair to the people and to us or to all the veterans that had given their lives for that day.
You think it will affect how people vote?
I think it will.
Taking a swing at the Prime Minister too, the Liberal Democrats have called for the Tories to make amends by giving away money received from controversial donor Frank Hester.
I think the Conservative Party should give £5 million of that donation to a veterans charity. I think if they did that, then people might be able to draw a line. But it's such a letdown for our whole country, our history, and particularly our brave veterans, that I think they've got to do more.
Back on the Conservative campaign, the press and public kept at a safe distance.
After Rishi Sunak's worst day of the campaign so far, the Tories will be keen to move the conversation on with more policy announcements. There are strong hints at a further package of tax cuts, and I understand that an announcement around stamp duty for first-time buyers will be part of the manifesto.
There's also a Tory attempt to box in Sir Keir Starmer by repealing so-called anti-car policies in Labour-run Wales and London. The opposition making cautious noises on tax, though, a Labour leader not wanting success to go to his head.
Everything in our manifesto won't be any surprises on tax. All of our plans fully costed, fully funded, and none of them involving tax rises over and above those that we've already set out.
Just quick reactions, to be honest.
Wise words for a Prime Minister who can't let any more errors slip through.
Right, ready?
Rob Burrow, Sky News in County Durham.
One child win so far.
We're With more than 7 million people currently on NHS waiting lists, parties are making big promises about how they'll tackle the backlog if they win the election. Almost 600,000 women, that's the equivalent to the population of Manchester, are currently waiting for gynecology treatment. Sky's People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin has been speaking to one of those unable to access treatment. And just a warning, his report mentions suicide, which you may find distressing.
My future is, in these four walls, and it breaks my heart to see everyone that I know, all my friends my age, doing so much. I feel in so many ways that the NHS have contributed to that.
Jasmine is one of millions of patients waiting months, sometimes even years, for NHS treatment. She suffers from endometriosis, which is a painful condition caused by cells usually found in the womb forming elsewhere, like the ovaries. What's the pain like?
I imagine it as there's a ball of acid in the middle of my torso, and it's kind of burning its way through each of my organs, and it feels like that 24/7. It just feels like there's just searing, stinging, burning pain constantly.
Jasmine has had to wait 1 year and 7 months for surgery. Even then, it was full of pitfalls.
It got cancelled 6 times, so and there was never really a good enough explanation. I've been made to feel like I'm taking up their time. I've been made to feel like I'm not important.
The number of people waiting for treatment on the NHS has doubled to 7.5 million since the pandemic. It's only now starting to fall slightly. And a Sky News poll reveals this is a huge issue. The highest number of those polled, 39%, said reducing waiting times is the thing they most want the next government to deliver for the NHS.
NHS waiting lists will fall, and people will get the care they need more quickly.
We will cut NHS waiting times. 4,000 extra appointments every week.
All the parties are making big promises about the NHS, and it's easy to see why. A quarter of people we polled think the NHS is completely broken. 61% think it's in a poor state, and parts of it are broken. Jasmine's wait for treatment has nearly broken her.
It did get to a point where I just, didn't really feel like I could carry on. I feel like if I was cared for and made to feel like I was important, then I don't think it would have got to this point at all.
When you hear politicians make promises about the NHS, how does that make you feel?
I'd like to believe that there was something that, there'd be some sort of superhero to sweep in and save the NHS, but I don't feel in this current climate that that's even remotely possible.
Jasmine is still waiting for her operation. She has to hope that the promises made in this election campaign will make a difference to her life and the millions of others waiting to be seen. Nick Martin, Sky News.
And if you or anyone you know has been affected by the issues raised, you can call the Samaritans on 116 123 or email joe@samaritans.org. There were standing ovations at 3 major rugby matches today as fans united to pay tribute to Rob Burrow. The rugby league legend died last week following his diagnosis with motor neurone disease 4.5 years ago. And as Emma Birchley now reports, the stands at Wembley and Twickenham were packed in his honour.
Rob made it his mission to raise awareness of this cruel disease.
The tributes began before the action inside Wembley Stadium. Rob Burrow's name and number 7 on every player's shirt, and a minute's silence.
A silence befitting a man of Rob Burrow's stature.
Then, 7 minutes into the Men's Challenge Cup final, this.
And the 7-minute mark is up around the ground.
Applause for a rugby league legend remembered not just for his skill on the pitch, but what came after. It was last Sunday that Rob died, 4.5 years after being diagnosed with motor neurone disease, an illness that would ravage his body, but not his determination. Jamie Jones-Buchanan played alongside him at his beloved Leeds Rhinos.
You didn't need to be a rugby league fan to appreciate. You just marvel at the way he moved, weaved in and out, his strength.
his speed, his resilience. It was ultimately the courage to play as a small guy in a gladiatorial game and the courage to live out an horrendous disease publicly that has made Rob Burrow the man that he is.
Rob Burrow used the shock of his diagnosis to raise awareness of MND and drive fundraising to pay for research into the disease. At Wembley, fans have been invited to lay tributes to the player at the Rugby League legend's statue. The array of shirts, flags and scarves in so many different colours are proof of the impact Rob Burrow had during his lifetime, with not only Leeds Rhinos supporters turning up to pay their respects, but the team's rivals too. The items placed here will be taken to join the sea of flowers and mementos left at the home of Leeds Rhinos in Headingley.
No matter First Division, Second Division, Super League teams, they've all come together because of Rob.
Seeing Rob Burrow play when we played against Leeds, and he's just epic. He was an epic player.
The rugby league community really comes together in these times. So I'm impressed that we've done this, and I'm with my son and my grandson here today, so I'm very privileged to come here and just pay tribute to him.
Emblazoned on the women's tops as they fell silent before their match were these words: "In a world full of adversity, we must dare to dream." Part of Rob's final message. And with family and friends continuing his work, the dream of a cure for such a destructive disease lives on. Emma Birchley, Sky News, Wembley.
Time now to catch up on all of the sports news.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Let's rewind slightly to 2018. I just wonder, ahead of that World Cup, what was the feeling like? What was the emotions like?
Obviously, it was a new group in 2018. Gareth was at the start of something in terms of trying to build something. The expectation really was probably just to get out of the group. But no, we played really well in that tournament. We set a good base, a good foundation to enable us to go on this journey that we've been on. It was a great time for me, a time where probably I moved up a level in terms of playing at a top level in football. It was a brilliant tournament, and of course one that I look back at and I'm really proud of.
Going into this Euros, how do you adapt to maybe that different type of pressure?
Yeah, I think the pressure comes with experience of being in these big matches and done what we've done over the previous years. So of course being in a semi-final of a World Cup, a quarter-final of a World Cup, a final of the Euros, that helps. You enable you to have the mental capacity to deal with the pressures. So yeah, of course, and obviously the talented squad that we've got, many options that we have, also helps that too.
And just to touch on Gareth there, you mentioned what he was trying to build at the start and what he has built since. Did he do anything specifically at the start to really bring that group together?
We knew how important it was to bring the group.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
The astronaut who took one of the most famous pictures of all time of our planet has died in a plane crash. 90-year-old William Bill Anders was part of Apollo 8, a daring mission to orbit the moon in 1968. Sky's Fraser Maud reports.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, is that pretty?
Beautiful, iconic, perfect. The first colour photograph of the Earth from space, Earthrise became one of the most famous images in human history. It was taken from Apollo 8 by astronaut William Bill Anders on Christmas Eve 1968 during NASA's first manned lunar orbit mission. It not only captured the world, it changed it.
We went to the moon to explore the moon. What we really did was just discover the Earth. And so I think Earthrise will go down in history as an iconic first real view of our home planet, which is very fragile and very delicate.
Bill Anders returned from space to a hero's ticker-tape welcome and went on to live a remarkable life. His son confirmed that he died aged 90, piloting a light aircraft which crashed just off the coast of Jones Island in Washington state, saying the family were devastated by his death. Astrophysicist Rosemary Coogan recently qualified to become only the UK's third ever astronaut. For her, Earthrise provides a humbling perspective.
What we can learn from these photos is really
the context of where we are, seeing ourselves from afar, realising we are part of something so much bigger, how beautiful our planet is, how much we need to appreciate our place in it and look after it.
Bill Anders will always be missed by those he knew and always remembered for the image he captured of a beautiful and fragile Earth. Fraser Maud, Sky News.
Stunning. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview.